Okay, good evening everyone. Thank you for joining us. This will be the first workshop in English of this two-day conference. We are very excited to welcome you tonight. For those of you who joined the first session, we hope you enjoyed it. I am Delphine Moreau. I'm the director of HEC in the UK. I'm based in London, and I'm delighted to represent here the Life Project team who has worked so hard to organize these two-day events, and we hope you will enjoy it. The topic this year, as you know, is all about the future of work and optimism, which is a very topical, subject, of course. So as you know, you will have 2 days of conferences, roundtables, workshops, and we really hope you will enjoy it. And tonight, we are delighted to welcome Ben Depraz-Brenninkmeijer. And Ben, he's based in Bristol, and he will talk to us about true optimism, letting go of the happiness fantasy. So I'm sure you can't wait to hear what is this happiness fantasy and how optimism is going to sit, around this. So without further ado, I'm leaving the floor to you, Ben. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Delphine. Thank you so much for the intro. Welcome, everyone. First of all, if any of you would accept that, I would really love to see a few faces, because this is not going to be a talk. It's going to be a workshop. We're going to have a lot of exercises to do together. So if anyone wants to put their camera on, thank you, Enrico. Thank you, Philippe. Thank you, Florence. Thank you, Georgie, Firas, Noor Edin. That's really nice. It makes me think like I'm speaking with real people. Hi, Sophie. Obviously, if you guys are eating or have things to do, please feel free to do so. I understand this is, I'm not sure where people are in the world. I'm in the UK, so for me, it's a bit earlier. But in France, obviously, it's kind of dinner time. So I apologize for competing with your dinner. I hope what we're going to do in the next hour and 24 minutes is going to be really interesting for you guys and get you to think in ways that you haven't perhaps considered before. Hello, Vincian and Sophie. Thank you for putting your videos on. So my name is Ben. I'll just get started. Maybe we were a few too many people to ask you guys one by one to say something about yourself, because that would have been even better and even nicer for me. But you'll have some opportunities between each other in small groups to share some reflections and insights. So it's going to be a bit interactive. But I would say in this main session, at the beginning, I'll be the one either introducing something, giving you something to do, an exercise, or leading a bit the subject of tonight's workshop. But as we go, please, if you have questions, feel free to share them in the chat. You can also just unmute yourselves and sort of jump in if something's really burning. And I'll do my best to kind of answer within the allocated time, because we've got a lot to cover. So as you may know, based on the bio and the intro for this workshop, I work in a company called iDiscover 360 in the UK. We basically offer cutting edge human development solutions. So we work with individuals, people like yourselves, or we work with companies and teams. And we do workshops or one-on-one coaching on various different aspects of a person's life nowadays. So that's just a very brief intro. I've been doing this for almost 6 years. Before that, I did a bit of investment banking, not for very long. Found it very unfulfilling for me personally. And I was certified, I graduated from HEC in 2013, so almost 8 years ago. So that's the quick backdrop. What I would love to hear before I dive in, I'm going to have a bit of a presentation to share with you on this workshop around true optimism, letting go of the happiness fantasy. And what I would love to have everyone share, at least in the chat, at least for yourselves, if you've got something to write on or take notes on. But if you would be so inclined, sharing the chat, even if it's just to me privately, you can select and not share it with everyone. What is one intention that you have for this workshop? Like what's, you know, if you could go away with one thing, what would that be? Or what's something that intrigued you just in the title? Just so I get a sense a little bit of like why people are here, basically. That would be very helpful. I may or may not be able to address that, but I'm just curious to hear what drew you to attend, you know, spend an hour and 30 minutes of your time on this topic. I'll just give you 30 seconds or so. Or what would you love to get out of this? And if you don't want to share it, that's fine. At least write it down for yourself. I'm just going to share out loud a few. It's going to be anonymous anyway, so that's fine. How to bring and maintain happiness at work, what's important to keep in mind, understanding what you mean by the happiness fantasy, and whether that notion is blocking you from being happy. Being happy is often addressed as the main goal everyone should have, but it does seem really vague. Nice. Working life is very often serious. Link fantasy and work and performance. Okay, cool. So a lot around the topic of like happiness, the link with work, better manage expectations around work and personal goals, how to keep goals realistic, how to manage difficult situations with optimistic approach. Okay, cool. So we're going to definitely address some of those full on with what we've got. And then some aspects, I won't be able possibly in this time to tailor it, but I'll do my best. I'm going to share with you, thank you for sharing, first of all. I'm going to share with you just the beginning of what I'm intending for this. So every time, bear with me, I'm going to have to share and then unshare. Are you all familiar, the people I can see, are you guys all familiar with Zoom? When I share my screen, you can expand the window so that you could still see other faces and not necessarily the screen fully. But I'll just go right in. For me, the three intentions that I have, and hopefully I will fulfill this evening with you guys, is one, introduce you to an intelligent framework to reframe past events and build an empowering life perspective that also helps you looking forward. Two, build your adaptability and resilience through rigorous practice. So in this workshop, you're already going to do some work, basically. And three, leave you inspired to face the challenges in your life more powerfully and resolutely. And what's going to happen, I believe, if I fulfill all of these, is that you'll be able to take a lot of things away and basically tailor them to your own life situation, whether you're talking about work, whether you're talking about life in general, whether you're talking about your relationships at work or any other aspect. So just a bit of context, first of all, I recommend you be as present as you can. I know when we're online, it's really hard to do so. You know, you've got tabs open in the background and you've got WhatsApp and maybe it's time to eat and all these things. But the more present you can be, including up until the end, the more you will get. If you leave also before the end, there's some context you will miss. There's some nuances you won't be privy to, and that would be a shame for you. Be respectful in the breakouts. There's going to be some moments where I invite you to share. Obviously, whatever you choose to share is up to you. But when someone else is sharing, you know, they're making an effort to contribute. And so let's just all be respectful of each other. And if someone gives you, I don't know, an observation, a bit of feedback, anything that can help, assume they have the best intentions in mind, including me. So that's always a useful one to have there. Work with an open mind. Again, I'm going to ask you some questions that could be a little confronting in terms of like how to think about things. I'm not trying to convince anyone. I'm not trying to have you agree or disagree with the framework I'm going to introduce you to, but I'm encouraging you to, at least for the duration of this workshop, work with an open mind. It will serve you. And finally, dare to lean into the discomfort if anything shows up for you that's a little bit challenging or a little bit uncomfortable. For this time being, same thing. If you try to engage, you will be rewarded in the end. I have no doubt about this. Very quick intro so you understand what we're about to do and talk about when we talk about happiness and when we talk about optimism. We need first to give a bit of background of, like, at least in our framework and iDiscover, how we approach this. So on the surface here of this kind of slice of pie, just checking visually, can you all see the screen properly? Yeah? Okay, awesome, thank you. So at the top here on the surface layer, let's say you've got three big challenges, three big aspects of life that in iDiscover we deal with. And I've worked with entrepreneurs, bankers, investors, fashion designers, consultants, tech CEOs, like everything. It doesn't matter what job you're in, doesn't matter if you're in transition, if you don't have a job right now, if you're owning your business or working in a big company or a small company. We all face in modern life these three big areas. One is career fulfillment, which can be a challenge around what to do for a living, your purpose, your performance at work, right? That's a big area. We all face challenges there. Relationships, which can be both romance, family, or at work, relationship with your boss, with coworkers, even with friends. Another aspect of life where we have a lot of energy being consumed. And finally, mental resilience, which is anything to do with like dealing with stress, pressure, losing someone, you know, disease, going bankrupt, like that kind of thing, which is basically our ability to bounce back and deal with adversity. So underpinning all of these, the way we look at it is around your career fulfillment, that's your relationship to yourself, in the sense of, you can skip the IQ, EQ, AQ for now, just for the sake of time, but your relationship to yourself. How much do you know yourself? How much do you know what matters to you, who you are, what you're about, what's your purpose? That's kind of a self-knowledge, as the saying goes, you know thyself. Relationships, that's your relationship between yourself and others. And mental resilience is your relationship between you and the world at large, like life, you know, events, the universe, however you wish to frame it. So before we go any further, the first thing I'd like you to reflect on, and I'm going to put you in groups very, very shortly just to identify this. Identify a challenge in your life in the past that occurred to you in any of the aspects of life that I just mentioned, right? Anything you want. And it has to be a challenge that you dealt with well. So, you know, at the time you felt it was difficult, but you were centered and practical and felt like, you know, you were empowered to deal with it. Even if other people around you kind of lost it a little bit, you felt more able to deal with this powerfully and effectively. That's one example. And the second example that I'm asking you to think about is a challenge, on the contrary, where it knocked you off balance for quite a while and you were not that empowered to deal with it, right? You kind of broke down a little bit, and you don't need to pick anything dramatic. It could be like your high school breakup. You know, it took you like a year to recover from that. Or it could be anything you like. You don't need to go into the story, but just identify one of each. And I'd like you I'm going to put you in small groups of threes. I'd like you to just share that with each other, just saying, well, one challenge I dealt with really well is, for me, for example, when I quit investment banking, and, you know, I didn't make any money for about a year. And that was quite stressful. And in London, you know, a bit difficult because it's not like I had a lot of savings, but I think I was really proactive and bold and going for it. And I felt very empowered. Another one that I didn't deal with so well was a breakup I had with, you know, my ex-partner romantically. And that's something took me like 6 months to get over. And I was just a bit confused. And okay, so that's it. It took me like 25 seconds to share this with you. So everybody good? I'm just going to give you barely, I need to add a few rooms here. All right, so let me put you in rooms right now. Give me a minute. Think about your examples in the meantime. Okay. So only rooms of 3s except one room of 2. And you have 5 minutes. Cool, welcome back everybody. Oh, I can see a lot more faces. That's really nice. Great. So how was that? Too short, I guess, as always. It's always too short in breakouts. I apologize already for this, but it's good. It keeps you on your toes and makes sure you're present. So excellent. Okay, so here's the point about why I asked you to share this. When we think about challenges here, and that's kind of our thesis, you know, I'm not saying, again, you have to agree, but I'm suggesting that the difference between the times where you dealt with a challenge powerfully and the one where you dealt with a challenge not as powerfully was your degree, your level of self-awareness at that point in time in this particular aspect of life. Okay, now self-awareness is not the way we look at it. It's not like something that just goes up in time. It's a dynamic thing. You can be very self-aware about certain things at different periods of your life and very unaware in other areas. And so that's the starting point, because in iDiscover, all we do to help people is basically build their self-awareness. That's it. Like on the surface, we all have different challenges. They look the same, they look different. But deep down, the more we can help someone build their self-awareness, the more empowered they are to deal with challenges, the challenges that they're facing. So that's what we're going to do in the next hour. All we're going to do is build your self-awareness, make you more aware of something. And then you will see on the other side of it, how much more effective you are at dealing with a challenge that you're thinking of. Okay, that's all we're going to do. And how we do that, we do it through questions. So 7 areas, just so you have a bit of context. Again, this is something in iDiscover we usually deal with in, over the course of 4 days, but here we have only an hour, so I'll be brief. But that's just how we slice life. You have different models out there. You have, there's like the 3 areas of life, the 10 areas of life, the 15 areas of life. We have 7 because we think that kind of covers it all. There's physio-mental down here, which is your physical, mental, and well-being. There's relational here, which is basically your close, intimate relationships, your family, your partner, your kids, your parents, your siblings, maybe very, very close friends if you're like family. Societal here, which is more like friends, social life, social groups, communities, civil life, all of these aspects here. Down here on the right, intellectual and educational, that's all your skills, competencies, know-how, degrees, education. Professional is very transparent. It's anything related to your career and vocation and work. Financial, also very transparent, anything related to finances and assets and resources and wealth. And cultural, spiritual, which is more about your identity, where you're from, your culture, your connection to a belief system. So that pretty much covers, the way we think about life. It's just an illustration. Now, I want you to think the next thing we're going to use is basically a framework and an exercise we're going to dive in right away. I'll give you, after the exercise, a lot more context around happiness and fantasy and all of that. But first, we need to do the actual work of building awareness. So I'd like you to pick a challenge in your life. Here you go. That occurred in your life that was really hard to deal with, to go through at the time, but you wouldn't change it today. We all have something like that somewhere. Something that no matter how difficult it was for you to live through, you know you wouldn't go back, you wouldn't change anything. When you speak to friends, when you speak to that's how you speak about it, right? It was like, it was really, really hard to get fired, but you know what? It's just something. I mean, I'm grateful it happened, and today I wouldn't change it. Or I was really devastated that I didn't make it into this particular group in sports, or this particular, or we couldn't move to this country, or whatever it might be. But actually, looking back now, I wouldn't change that. So take a moment, have a think, and ask yourself just why. So what's one thing that happened in your life? You can scan your whole life, all the way since you were a kid. Something that was a challenge to go through at the time, but today you wouldn't change it, and ask yourself why. Manually. All I'm going to do in the meantime is very quickly recreate some rooms. Wow, there's more people now. Okay. Sophie. Okay, great. So I'm going to give you, well, actually, we really need to manage time. So I'm going to give you again 5 minutes, and all up in rooms. And all I'm asking you to do is share with each other without going into the story. You don't need to go personal, just give very much the keywords, the broad line. And then how do you know why you wouldn't change it? Like, what is it about this event that you think now that makes you believe actually there's nothing to change? Okay, so I'll give you 5 minutes, make sure all three of you speak, and then we go into the nuts and bolts of the exercise. All good with everyone? Okay, fab. Enjoy. All right, welcome back, everybody. Was it interesting to hear each other's challenges? Cool. I'd love nothing more than for everybody to share. If you want to say something, please feel free to say it either in the chat or really if you want to share it with the group, go ahead. But otherwise we'll dive in because believe it or not, we're just doing the setup here. We haven't actually started the workshop really. So anything obvious? If not, fab, let's go. So what we're going to do now is build mental resilience, doing exactly the process you guys did intuitively, except we're going to do it in a structured manner. Okay, so this process is going to replicate what your mind has already done about this challenge. Hopefully all of you, when you think about why you wouldn't change it, you thought about things like, it made me who I am today. I met this person because of it, or I learned X or Y about life, different things that you've identified as sort of silver linings. So now what we're going to do is look at another event in your life. We all have many, say, negative events and memories that we still wish would change. We still wish we'd go back and think, well, if that would have been different, that would have been better. Let's take COVID as a starting point. I would like you all to think about one challenge that COVID in the last sort of 13 months brought to your life. It could be that you were sick yourself. It could be that you were put on furlough. It could be that your kids didn't have school anymore, and so you had to look after them at the same time as working. Whatever is a challenge for you that was familiar from COVID times. For me, the moment the UK went into lockdown in March last year, we had to cancel our live events. We do live seminars in small groups, and basically overnight, 60 to 80% of our revenues disappeared. And we're a small company. We're a small company of like 7 people. And it was the moment where I was going to become partner. So basically putting my own livelihood as a direct result of the profit of the company, instead of, being freelance and be able to do other things too. So it was the worst time possible. That's my challenge. Okay. Suddenly overnight we lose more than 60% of the revenues, and we can't do our main product. And obviously that suddenly makes me stressed about my professional direction and what I should do next and how we're going to go through it. And now I'm going to be responsible for paying people in the company and with what money. So that's what I'm facing. Everybody pick something. And we're going to go through a series of 7 questions. So let me share my screen. Just a methodical process. Do you all have something to write on? If not, I suggest you have a notepad or something. Great. So we call it Assets and Gardens. I'll give you context. But before we start, everybody has a challenge? If so, raise your hand or nod or give me a reaction or something. Great. Seems like most people have something. Whatever it is. All I would say before we start is I've worked with hundreds of people on anything from going bankrupt, being fired, being, and I'm going to go really personal here, being sexually abused, being beaten. Like I've worked on every possible event. Here, I would recommend, because we only have 50 minutes together, not to go for something too challenging, not to go for something extreme of that nature. Not because the framework doesn't work, it definitely works, but because I don't have the personal access to you right now in this setup or the time that will allow me to manage this like really well and properly. So I would just like to make a request. Usually I would have like a lot more time to work with people on more intense experiences. So I just want to ask you to basically manage yourselves, to pick challenges that are not, say, traumatic for you, simply because I cannot give you the level of attention and focus and care that is required to deal with it, right? But something like I shared totally works. Something that was challenging totally works. It's just managing expectations here for the time and trying to be a bit sensible to this. So what we're going to do is look at the value this event actually brought to your life. Okay, we're not negating the drawbacks. We're not negating the fact that it was challenging for me to go through this period of time. But now all we're going to ask is, okay, what is the value? The challenges doesn't have to be during COVID. I just use this example because somebody asked a question, sorry. It doesn't have to be, it's just a useful starting point because all of us, our life was changed during that time. But after that, we'll do a second example where you can scan anything in your life. That's up to you. But first, for the first one, it might be helpful. First question is, how did you become stronger mentally, physically, or emotionally because you went through this experience? So I'm asking myself initially, I'm like, I don't see I don't see how I became stronger from our core programs being canceled, right? I don't see how in the physical, mental, emotional health and well-being area of my life that brought any value. But then I think again, and I'm asking myself, okay, well, hang on, what happened as a result of these being canceled? When I went to London to run these events, I would disappear for 5 days and I wouldn't sleep very much during that time. Here, because I didn't go, I got a lot more sleep, right? I stayed at home in Bristol, I slept more. Okay, so that's one way it added value to me. I got more sleep and more rest. How else did it add value to me mentally or physically? Or, well, because I didn't go to London for like 5-6 days during that time, all I do is run the workshop. It's an extraordinary experience, but that's all I do from like 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. So there's no exercise at all. Instead, I remember back in April and May, what I did was spend a lot more time with my wife just cycling around because that's kind of all we could do at the weekends. So I spent more time actually outdoors cycling, which was good for my body and good for my mental health. Okay, great. So that's a reaction and because this cancellation happened, right? So you keep scanning, just cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect, asking yourself, because this happened, how did I become physically or mentally or emotionally stronger? Maybe you find one thing, maybe you find two, maybe you find three, but just go back in your memory and scan. Some questions will be easier than others. That's fine. But that's where you're confronting your mind already. You're confronting this. You didn't think about this before. All we're doing is looking. Okay, I'm going to ask you the next question. Who did you become closer to or bonded with more deeply, in particular in the close relationships that you have? So whether that is direct family members, partner. For me, I know, for example, that I definitely had, emotional support from my wife, who was there. I had some conversations with her. She was supporting me and encouraging me now and again. Okay, that was helpful because I was stressed, right, by the experience. I also know I had a few useful conversations with my father, actually, who gave me his perspective a few times. So, like, we already had a good relationship, but I just had this little bit more, right? This little bit more personal attention and advice and support from him because I went through this. So maybe you develop more independence as well. That could be the case. In the area of family and intimate relationships, I know a lot of parents who say, well, it just stressed me out like crazy because I had to manage work and kids. Fair enough. Fair enough. That's a drawback that I cannot argue with. But I also know that these parents have acknowledged that they have spent more time with their kids than they probably will at any other point in the rest of their life. There was a very precious period of time as well to be more, in terms of quantity, present. That's a benefit. So we're just asking, just looking. Who did you become closer to? Who did you have more time to bond with? Just scanning methodically. We're asking ourselves the next question. This time we're going to the societal area of life. What other people or networks or communities showed up in your life during that event or after that event or provided support? For me, I know, for example, that the iDiscover community was very supportive. Not everyone, but some people were very present and very encouraging, and actually some of them volunteered to help to run online events, to help the company just like create more awareness. Okay, cool, that was super helpful. I also know, funnily enough, that that's about the time where I signed up for the Infinity Pass with the HEC alumni community. So there was more and more digital stuff from the HEC alumni network available. So that also provided me a space, as I was wondering what the hell to do, to connect with more people, create new connections. It's actually as a result of this that I'm here today. Before that, 7 years, I wasn't really involved in the community. And COVID happened, and then boom, 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 and now I'm here. It's like, start to make connections, cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. Whatever happened, yes, it had drawbacks for sure. But what was the value? What were the benefits? Just scan. Next area, what specific, that's intellectual, educational. What specific skills or knowledge did you have more time or motivation to learn? Well, for me, running workshops on Zoom. That's not something I did before. All the workshops we did were in person. But of course, because we had to cancel all our live programs, suddenly it was a no-brainer. We had to learn how to do our workshops on Zoom. So I learned a bit more about, being technical and using the platform. And okay, great. That's a little benefit. It's not huge, but it's something. And also because we didn't do our live programs, I had to do a lot more digital one-on-one coaching, because that could still happen, right? It's a conversational style. I can work with people everywhere in the world. So my skills around personal coaching also increased a lot because I had a lot more practice, because I had more time, because we didn't have a choice. Does that make sense? So we're just asking questions. If you see something, great. If you don't see anything, also great. But at least look. Next question, we're going to the next area of life. How did it help or advance your professional career? Another way of looking at it, right? Another angle. So something happened. In my case, the program's getting canceled. Initially, I'm thinking it didn't advance my professional career as a coach. On the contrary, it kind of slowed it down. Everything sort of came to a standstill. But then I'm asking myself, well, hang on. I have a lot of clients who faced similar difficulties. So going through that actually makes me more able to relate to them, makes me more able to empathize with them, makes me more able to coach them properly because I actually know better what they're going through. So I have a firsthand experience that helps me connect with my clients better. Okay, that's helpful as a professional coach. How else? Actually, it bonded me a lot more. All that is factually correct. Like I'm only sharing what happened. It bonded me a lot more to the founder of iDiscover, who is my business partner today, because we became business partners exactly at that period of time. So going through the crisis together, and the fact that we had to strategically really innovate and change and be in it together, it really brought us closer. So that's professional relationship. And that's a benefit in my life. So just think as broadly as you can, just as an observer. Next question, we're going to financial. What funds, resources, assets, anything in the realm of finance became available to you? In the UK, as a self-employed person whose income got affected by COVID, I received some support from the UK government. I can list exactly the amount that was made available to me. That's a benefit. So easy to take it for granted, right? So easy to say, well, hang on, 70% of my income disappeared. Yeah, but I received financial support. So be specific. If you know a loan that you got, a 0% loan, even if you're put on furlough, then the state is supporting you, whatever it is. Any gift that people gave you after going through this, even if you were sick in the hospital, any resource that was given to you afterwards, anything that was paid for by others. And finally, the last one, cultural, spiritual, is how else did you grow or become more self-aware or expand your sort of horizons? I can give you my example again. For me, this was a bit of a, I didn't go through the 2008, 2009 financial crisis. I was still studying at the time. So I would say that going through this economic crisis is a rites of passage. It's almost like a maturity experience that is necessary for my development, and great. I'm grateful to have gone through it. Right, it helped me mature, be less naive about the world of work. So anything that you learned, any life lesson, any realization, any introspection that came for you as a result of this. Okay, so you got all the prompts here. And I'll give you a few minutes, just 2 minutes. Go back on your all the questions and ask yourself now, looking at the answers you already have, what was a second order benefit or a third order benefit? Okay, so I told you, for example, that because we canceled our program, so I took more coaching clients. Because I took more coaching clients, I met Chris, who also became a friend. Right? And Chris introduced me to somebody else called Lou, who also became a client. So now I can add him also in my list of societally and professionally benefits. So scan again your answers and ask yourself, and because that happened, what else happened, right? Linking second degree, third degree, or second order, third order, just to see if there's anything you missed, anything that happened at the time or anything that happened later on. Because we just want to be exhaustive. Again, some questions will resonate better for you than others. That's fine. But the more you do that, the more you actually build your awareness around that event to see it in full. The drawbacks, which you already knew, and the benefits, which perhaps you didn't pay as much attention to. Okay, who's done out of the people I can see? Great, thank you, Stephanie, for the thumbs up. Okay, thanks, Noureddin. Just trying to see what I can see, but look, this exercise is we're going to do another one. It's never ending how much you can do this, and I'm going to share with you the context of like how powerful this can be. But first, I'm going to share a little video in the chat. So I'm going to share a link. It's going to be a 3-minute video. We're all going to watch it at the same time. So I'm going to send you the link. It's automatically opening at the right time. And then I want you to watch for 3 minutes, 20 seconds exactly, which is till 8:55, 8:55. It's basically Steve Jobs' commencement speech in Stanford in 2005. Maybe some of you have seen it. In it, he shares 3 stories, and we're listening to the second story. Great. So please don't watch the whole thing. Just watch the second story, which is this 3 minute, 20 seconds bit, and pay attention to what he's saying in the context of, you know, what you just did here. So let me share with you the link. We're all on mute, so that's great. Everyone, here we go. I'm sharing it. I'm launching it myself on my side, and then we all come back and I continue in 3.5 minutes. Cool. All right, so I'm going to continue, guys. But obviously, he shares this talk in the context of like finding what you love. But interesting how, you know, him getting fired, you see the cause and effect already. At the time, really painful. But over time, he's able to connect the dots already and looking at actually it created a lot of space for him to do Pixar and other things, which at the time he couldn't see. But looking back, it's easier to see. So all we're trying to do here is basically create that wisdom acquisition faster. Like, let's not wait 10 years, maybe we can find it. Maybe we can more quickly embrace whatever change happened. And what we're doing is practicing by looking at past events. So before I break you out into breakouts, I'd like you to do another line on finding another example. This time, pick your any challenge in your life, any age. Again, you know, only pick something you feel comfortable challenging yourself about, and then go through the 7 questions, which I'm going to put on the screen again. How this event added value to my life, anything at all, but something challenging, right? A negative event or memory that you relate to as negative in your mind. And you ask yourself, same thing, how did you become stronger mentally, physically, or emotionally? Who did you become closer to or bonded with more deeply? How did it help you in the relational area of life? What other people, networks, communities showed up or provided support? What specific skills or knowledge did you have more time or more motivation or had to learn? Professionally, how did it help or advance your professional careers, your professional relationships? Financially, what funds, resources, or assets became available to you? And culturally, spiritually, how did you grow, become more self-aware? This is a practice. You can't just like intellectually get it. You have to see it for yourselves. Find something that affected you, and at this time you only. Don't go into somebody else's story. It will make it more easy for you to find the data because it's your own life. Let's just do a second one, and then we'll move to something else. Yes, somebody has a question. Yeah, another challenge, Shetnesh. Who raised their hand? Florence.
Florence, yes.
Hi.
Just a question. Hi. For some challenge, I expect that we may not have the answer to all the questions, right?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. They're designed to help you. Again, remember at the beginning, you found this challenge, you wouldn't change it. That's because in your mind, you've already processed some of the benefits and you're so clear about them. That's it. Like you're good, you're balanced. It's integrated to your life. So all we're doing here is trying to scan as broadly as we can, but also as concisely as we can and methodically as we can to replicate that process. That is a natural process. But maybe sometimes some questions will not be relevant. Maybe you'll be like, actually, financially, I don't see any benefit. Okay, that's fine. But at least let's look, right? Let's not discard it too quickly.
Okay.
Because there will be benefits if we really take the time to ask the questions and challenge the mind to see more fully the balanced picture.
Okay.
But very good question. So I'll just give you 5 minutes to go through this, not even. I would normally give you more time, but I just want you to get the essence of it and choose to use it in your life afterwards if you want to. But then we have quite a bit of context to go through. In particular, try to be exhaustive when you think about like who showed up to help in your family, in your friends, in your teachers, in your colleagues, random people. Maybe some didn't show up and you thought they would, but then who else helped? People who gave you business, people who, the staff at the hospital, the nurses, like so many people that provided some form of support. Really pay attention to that, write them all down. Okay. All right, guys, so I'm going to stop my screen share. Let me just check where we are. So what I like to do is one more, the last breakout room, make it count. What I'd love for you to share is something either already inspiring or something that you learned or something that surprised you from doing the exercise or watching the Steve Jobs video. We so rarely go back and look at past memories and look at them this way. This is an opportunity for you to just identify something that you learned that was useful for you. And don't get me wrong, we're far from done. There's all the context that I'm going to share now that will bring all this to life. But already share with your group something that you didn't see before, right? And I'm just going to put you in rooms now. You have same thing, 5 minutes. And then we have another 15 minutes to help you understand basically the whole context of what's going on here. All right, welcome back. Again, lots of faces. How exciting. Everybody's so excited to talk about their challenges. How cool. Great. Do we have everybody back? Yeah, I think we do. Okay, fantastic. So guys, let me give you a bit of like the broader context here and why the title of this workshop and basically why I asked you to do this kind of work without giving you too much information. So let me share this again. First of all, the more you look, the more you find. Imagine this is a human mind, right? We all register the drawbacks pretty easily, the negative polarity, the negative side of life. There's many reasons for that, you know, the survival bias and the fact that we're wired to check if we're going to be eaten by a lion and all of this. You probably are very familiar with all of this research, but we're not very good at seeing a balanced view. And we remember things in the past with this kind of like negative, you know, bias of some events were negative, some events were amazing. And then inevitably that view of things mean in the future, we're going to project the same thing. The worries are basically you projecting a scenario where this is going to happen. That's fear. But if you really want to be more aware and play with reality as it is, you want to practice seeing both sides, not just one side. Optimism as it stands is kind of only seeing the pluses. We'll talk about that in a second. But all we did here is practice, helping you practice, see the other side equal, just proportional, okay? Just to have a more balanced view of things. And the more you challenge yourself to find, the more you will find. Now, the benefits of this exercise, the drawback is that it's hard work, and you can't necessarily blame your past history anymore for what's going on. It's a personal responsibility kind of approach. The benefits is that first, you integrate in your psychology the past events that you used to put a lot of energy into wishing were different. We only did 1.5, maybe 2 today. I would recommend you at home, you just work it on like dozens. It will empower you. The second benefit of this exercise, you train your mind to see the other side faster, which means, you know, if tomorrow I get fired by 5 of my clients, I am way more quickly able to ask myself, okay, what will be the benefits of that? The drawbacks, they're immediate, right? I feel right away, I'm going to feel like challenged and threatened and fearful, but faster I can go back to my center. I'm asking myself, okay, how is this going to serve me? And I can be more present and more centered quicker. And the third benefit is you start to develop this relationship of trust with life where challenges will come, no worries about, you know, there's no question that they will arise. It's part of the design. But you start to trust that whatever happens, it will create consequences equally, positive, negative, and you'll just navigate both. It's never only one-sided. Ultimately, you can get to this place where you say, actually, this is one of the best things that happened to me. And you can say this about things that were pretty challenging once, if you really do the exercise thoroughly. Now, that's a question for you. What's the unspoken goal that we're all striving for? In society, what is the thing that we all aspire to without even really talking about it? You can put in the chat or you can unmute yourselves. When I say what's the purpose of it all? What are we all seeking? What comes to mind? Health, wealth, wisdom, happiness, yeah, satisfaction, yeah. If you think about health, wealth, and wisdom, what are they going to give you? Ultimately, yes, happiness is often the answer that will come to mind. It's also part of, you know, everybody's going to have a different response, clearly, which is awesome. Independence, inner peace, fair enough. I think the idea of like the pursuit of happiness is pretty anchored, at least in Western thinking. But when we look at, and I'm just going to wrap this up, when we look at life as it is, and we work with reality, this is what we see, that nature brings a few things. It brings a challenging force. It brings a supportive force to make sure ultimately that everything's growing. If you think about a muscle, just think of biology, your own muscle. If you want to grow a muscle, what do you need to give it? You need to give it both contraction, tension, pressure, right? Weightlifting, let's say. You also need to give it relaxation and rest and food. So you need to give it both challenge and support. That's the best way things will grow. When you look at trees and you look at animals, yeah, Florence, I'll come to you in a second. When you look at trees and animals, you see that these two forces are present everywhere. There's challenge and there's support. Ultimately, to make sure everything's growing, you could say everything's evolving, everything's changing, ultimately decay, which is another form of growth, etc. So when you look at nature, it doesn't demonstrate that we're here, you know, humans are part of nature. Human nature is part of nature. It doesn't demonstrate that we're here to be happy, really. It demonstrates that we are here to grow from a baby to an adult, from an acorn to an oak tree. If you think about your own children, for those of you who have kids, is your commitment to them to be happy? If you really think about it, if that was the case, you would give them everything they want, whenever they want, however they want. But that's not what you do. You want them to be fulfilled, yes. But that means you want them to ultimately grow up in the best way and be the best adults they can be so that they can seek their own fulfillment. So you give them hugs and you give them chores, right? You give them assignments and homework to do, which is the challenge. And you give them warm meals and a roof over the head and affection and different things, that's the support. But ultimately, you give them both. So the hardships are a key component of what makes you grow. Is it possible to repeat how to do this exercise with the image? Yes, I'll come back to it at the end, Shetnesh. So I'm just going to illustrate this because maybe it's going to answer your question, Florence. I don't know. Happiness is basically addiction to support. That's where we all are as a society. We're addicted to the comfortable side of life, to the nice things. Everybody's supposed to be nice. Everything's supposed to be working. That's basically when we say we want happiness, that's what we want. We want support. The problem is that's not aligned with how nature is designed. So that's never going to work. And the more we strive for happiness, the more challenges come on the other side that disappoint you and knock you down and make you feel like something's wrong and something's not working and everybody's out to get you. I'm exaggerating, but it's kind of the attitude that we all have to some degree. And so the happiness fantasy is this, is creating a fantasy in your mind of situations that only have benefits, that only have pluses, and that doesn't exist. If you take any situation and you ask yourself, what are both sides? What are the benefits? What are the drawbacks? You will always find there are both. In the exercise we did, we looked at negative events, which were things you already knew the drawbacks of, and I asked you to find the benefits so you have a more balanced, empowered view. But when you project fantasy scenarios, that's what you're doing, and that's also not fair. Because when you live that scenario you're projecting, there will be drawbacks to that, to you, inevitably. And so that's the fantasy that will make sure you are constantly disappointed about how things are working out. And optimism and this is to provoke your thinking. I'm not saying you have to agree, but just reflect and think about it. Optimism in its definition is this, what I'm showing you here, because it is about having this hopeful attitude that in the end, things will work out, which is like basically in the end, it will be benefits to all. And we consider that actually in the end, what will be is a balanced life with both drawbacks and benefits. You will always have to deal with both. And so what I would leave you with and recommend is that you actually strive for the challenge. Face and choose the challenge. Expect things to be challenging, whether it's at work, whether it's a product you're launching, whether it's your child that you're trying to raise, whether it's a relationship with a coworker. Face the challenge powerfully, like we did in this exercise where we looked at your challenge and we asked ourselves, how does it add value to my life? How does it help me grow that I'm actually going for this? Because that's what helps you align with growth and nature, and that helps you have a fulfilling life that isn't going into fantasies and staying very grounded and very realistic about how things are going to be. Seek challenges, take them on. You will attract support. Just like you saw in your examples, people will support you inevitably. And no matter what happens, you'll grow. I wanted to share with you this other perspective. Oh, before I do, Florence, you had a question. Is it still relevant?
Yes, the question was more around the frequency to do this exercise, asset and gardens. I trust, okay, what would be your recommendation? Because to make it an habit or to take the most benefit of it, I trust we need to do it. You see, like some people can prepare their week. Is it something that we should take time to reflect on, even on any events which happen, you see, on a weekly, bi-weekly, just to have a kind of idea? Because maybe waiting for an event, a challenge, maybe a bit too late, because the emotions to manage, you see, when you have something difficult happening to you, you see. So
great question. Again, the more you practice it by yourself, you can do like 10 different memories one afternoon. You sit down for 2 hours, you do 10 of them. That just builds the muscle. Okay. Then the practice, I would say, if you want to, it can be as simple as, every evening you ask yourself, what was one challenging thing today? Something that upset you. Maybe I'll tell myself at the end, I went over time with my workshop, I didn't manage in time, and I'll beat myself up thinking that was like that was not great. I should have stayed on time. And I can do this exercise on that. And I'll ask myself, okay, how did it benefit me that I went over time?
Okay.
I'll find a few benefits and then boom, I'm more centered. Great, I can improve, move on next time. So every evening you can pick one thing in the day, small or big, and start to ask yourself, what's one thing, one benefit that can come from that challenge that's already here or that will emerge, that will build your practice, right? It's a little gratitude practice, but instead of having gratitude for the positive things in life, which is easy, it's like, how can you build gratitude for the tough stuff, for the challenges? Because that's hard, but that's real resilience. And also that's more reality because really these challenges are helping you. So if you can, daily, again, in iDiscover, we spend hours working on this till people really get it as a drill. But if you don't have the luxury of doing it daily, then at least when, once in a while, if you have an hour free, just do it on a few events in your past. So the final piece is this poem from Douglas Malloch. That was at the turn of the 20th century, so a little while back. I'm going to read it to you, just give you a bit of a more artistic sense, perhaps, of the same idea. It's called Good Timber. The tree that never had to fight for sun and sky and air and light, but stood out in the open plain and always got its share of rain, never became a forest king, but lived and died a scrubby thing. The man, let's say woman as well, of course, this is a kind of an old poem. The man who never had to toil to gain and farm his patch of soil, who never had to win his share of sun and sky and light and air, never became a manly man, but lived and died as he began. Good timber does not grow with ease. The stronger wind, the stronger trees. The further sky, the greater length. The more the storm, the more the strength. By sun and cold, by rain and snow, in trees and men, good timbers grow. Where thickest lies the forest growth, we find the patriarchs of both. And they hold counsel with the stars, whose broken branches show the scars of many winds and much of strife. This is the common law of life. Just a little different, maybe some more artistic people around here that will resonate better with this. What I gave you is a framework. It's an exercise. You don't need to agree. I hope it can empower you. Looking towards the past, looking towards the future, it works either way. But basically, that's for me, for us at iDiscover, true optimism. It's this idea that you can have trust that things serve, everything serves. You will never get only one thing negative or one thing positive. That's an imbalanced perception. That's half the story. That's fact picking to create a story that is sensational. But the reality is everything's serving. We saw it with COVID. Immediately, huge negatives, right? Huge drawbacks. Within a few weeks, everybody was showing maps of like greenhouse gases emissions around the world having dropped and basically the earth looking so amazingly clean. Depends what scale you're looking at. There are drawbacks, there are benefits, always. It's tough, not everybody wants to hear it because we're all addicted to support, but that still is way more aligned with what nature demonstrates. I'll leave you with this quote. Epictetus, 2,000 years ago, said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." I hope I give you one tool. There's many others, but one tool that can help you empower your reactions, empower your perceptions, so you can be more centered and empowered and purposeful. If you have questions, if you want one-on-one follow-up, you can reach out. These are my details. You can find me on LinkedIn or ben@idiscover360.com or my UK number on WhatsApp, etc. I would be very happy to answer anything that for you didn't make sense, didn't work out. You just want to chat about it more, or you want direct support or more interest in iDiscover, very happy to talk about it. I think that's it. Thank you so much, guys. It's 9:01. I know it's late, but I really appreciate you being here till the end. And I'm going to stay around a little while anyway. So if anybody's got something they want to talk about, please feel free to stay. But thanks so much. I hope you have a nice evening and you enjoy the conference.
Thank you very much.